Hey world, how's it going? This is the first episode of Culture University. Today we're going to talk about energy, mainly two statements about energy. Everything is energy and everything is connected. So what does this mean and how can we use this? Everything is energy describes how everything we experience is made out of the same material or substance. From a stove to a tree to a fish to a mouse to a rock, it's all made out of energy. So if we know the characteristics of this fundamental energy, then can't we manipulate anything? The second statement, everything is connected, builds on the first, everything is energy. Because everything is connected describes a characteristic of energy, which is that because all energy is alike, it can combine or separate with itself infinitely. So two pieces of energy separated by a whole galaxy are still connected. Why? Because these pieces of energy still pull and push on each other through the force of their fields. This brings up another reality. All energy produces a field. A field is an unseen force which can pull or push stuff around it without physical contact. So by saying everything is connected, we are saying that energy can interact with itself no matter the distance. To say everything is connected is to say there are no coincidences. Everything is the interaction or input of energy. Because of this, we can make a simple equation to describe the behavior of energy and anything else, because all is energy. So using y equals x, we can use this equation to describe any relationship. Every equation you've ever seen derives from y equals x. The first equation you learn when you're learning about equations is this equation. And from this equation, you can derive y equals mx and y equals mx plus b, which is the equation more people are probably familiar with. You can simply get this form by taking pieces of x and manipulating it. So these are the same equation. But what does this equation mean more deeply? Fundamentally, this equation means energy is changing from one state into another. But the future state is still equal to the past state. It's the same energy, just in a different form. We can then use y equals mx, or y equals a constant times x, to describe any relationship. So over here, we can use y equals x to describe or find the connection between how many times I ate equals how much energy I have, how many hours I slept compared to how sleepy I am, how much mass there is compared to how much energy is there, which is the same relationship described in E equals mc squared. We can actually use y equals x and our understanding of y equals x to derive E equals mc squared with a simple experiment. So in order to determine the relationship between two variables, we just have to manipulate the y equals x equation and see how those variables react. So let's say we understand that energy is connected to mass, but we don't know how. So we just start off with energy equals mass. So then let's manipulate the equation to see the properties of this equation. So I'm going to raise mass. What happens when we raise mass? The equation says E equals mc squared says if we raise mass, energy will be raised. And if we lower mass, energy will be lowered. Well, let's say we want to test this to make sure that the equation is right. Let's say if we don't eat for a whole week and then measure our energy level at the end of the week, what is our energy going to be? It's going to be lower. So that's true. And then let's say we eat once a day for a whole week. What is our energy level going to be if we eat? It's going to be higher. So this is true as well. So that simple thought experiment essentially proved that there's a positive relationship between mass and energy. And a positive relationship means that if mass goes up, energy will go up. And if mass goes down, energy will go down. So we showed energy and mass have a positive relationship. A positive relationship means when mass goes up, energy will go up. A negative relationship would mean if mass went up, energy would go down. So the opposite would happen. So we determined that there's a positive relationship between energy and mass. If we wanted to find out the exact scalar or constant that determined the relationship between energy and mass, we would need to do some algebra. We would need to use the slope equation and real-world data points. So I'm just going to make up some data points to show you how to use the slope equation. Let's say we have 1 pound of mass for 18 units of energy, 2 pounds of mass for 25 units of energy. Then we can subtract the outputs and divide that by the subtracted inputs, and that'll give us the slope or the constant that we're looking for. So with this, we get that energy is equal to positive 7 times mass. So for every 7 masses, that's 1 energy. But this is just an approximation, and we can see how far off we are because the true equation is E equals c squared. So if we were to use more data points and actual real-world data points, not made-up ones, we should get a closer approximation to c squared. But with this technique, we can determine the relationship between any two variables, essentially anything. So let's try this technique with the variables mood and events. So the equation is going to be event, which can be positive or negative, equals mood times action. And mood can be positive or negative, whereas action can only be positive because you take one action, then the second, then the third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So an action can never be negative. Okay, so then we're going to plot all the possible combinations of this equation. So action is always positive. So mood, let's say we plug in a positive 1 mood. So a positive mood times a positive action is going to lead to a positive event. If we plug in a positive 3 mood, a positive mood times a positive action is going to lead to a positive event. If we plug in a positive 7 mood, a positive mood times a positive action, positive event. So no matter what positive value we put in for mood, it's always going to lead to a positive event. Now let's try negative. A negative 1 mood times positive action is a negative event. A negative 3 mood times a positive action, negative event. A negative 8 mood times a positive action is a negative event. So no matter how negative your mood is, it's always going to lead to a negative event. So we've determined that the relationship between mood and event is positive, and we can plot that on a chart. So if we plot mood as the x-axis and event as the y-axis, then we can plot and see, oh, if mood is positive, then all the points are going to be in this area because it's going to cause a positive event. And if the mood is negative, all the points are going to be in this area, a negative event. So this is the same line as y equals x. So this is basically telling us that the relationship between mood and event is similar to y equals x, a positive relationship. So you can try this at home by, forcing your mood one way and seeing the events that come about from that mood and your actions you take with that mood. But what I noticed is when I have a positive mood, I notice more positive events. And if I have a negative mood, I notice more negative events. So we can derive from this simple equation that a positive mood is the key for experiencing positive events, which is another phrase of saying success. So we showed that a key to success is a positive mood or outlook, and we showed this mathematically. And because everything is connected, there is in fact a relationship or correlation between mood and event. And to determine more precisely and exactly what the relationship is and what characteristics it has, then we would have to grab more real-world data and plot the entire line, which is essentially so we can plot out the full line, and the full line represents the relationship between the two variables. So everything is energy and everything is connected are two statements that get thrown around without even examining more deeply. But when we take a closer look, these two statements are profound. Everything is energy, from rocks to water to air to fire to lightning. So all the elements have the same source? And if everything is connected, then these elements can combine and separate into the myriad of forms we see all around us? Questions to be explored next time on Culture University, where wisdom weighs more than gold. Peace, world.